I should have known better than to follow him into those woods. It was late fall. The trees were shedding their leaves, and a biting chill had already settled in. But even as the wind howled through the pines, the air felt thick, like something was hanging in the balance. We didn't talk much as we made our way deeper into the forest. I think I was already starting to feel the wrongness of it all. How the trees seemed too close. How the silence was just a little too heavy. And then there was the whispering. It started slow at first, like the rustle of dry leaves. But then as we walked, it grew louder, almost as if something or someone was trying to say something. But the words kept getting lost in the wind. "You hear that?" I asked. He didn't answer. And that's when I realized he wasn't looking at me anymore. He was looking deeper into the woods, his eyes wide and unblinking. I wanted to turn back then to tell him this was stupid, but something stopped me. Maybe it was the look in his eyes, or the way the wind seemed to carry those whispers closer, calling us. I never should have gone in, but by then it was too late. It all started a week before. I wasn't even supposed to be in those woods. I've been back home in Maine, visiting some family after years of being away. Old friends had invited me to reconnect, and we decided to take a hike through the pines. It was supposed to be harmless, a simple, nostalgic walk through the forest I used to wander as a kid. My friend Mark, though, was different. He'd always been the curious one, the one to wander off and explore things most people would avoid. He kept talking about the strange happenings in the woods, the old stories, the rumors. I didn't believe any of it at first, thinking it was just some drunken ghost tale spun around a campfire. But Mark insisted, and that's when he told me about the whispers. "There's something out there, Jack," he said, his voice low, almost secretive. "I've heard them voices in the trees." I'd laughed it off, but he looked serious. His face was pale. "Old stories?" I told him. "Folklore." But he was shaking his head. "I know what I heard." So when he suggested we go back out there last week, I didn't think much of it. After all, what harm could there be in hearing some creepy noises in the woods? The night we went was different. It wasn't the same as when we were kids, laughing and daring each other to go deeper into the woods. No, there was a weight in the air this time, a heaviness I couldn't explain. The pines towered above us, casting long shadows in the fading light. As we walked, the sounds around us grew distorted, as if the trees themselves were alive, murmuring secrets from an age long past. "Can you hear it?" Mark asked, his voice barely audible over the wind. I didn't want to admit it, but I could. It wasn't the sound of the wind. It wasn't the usual rustle of leaves. These were distinct like faint voices, too quiet to make out, but there, always there. I tried to shake it off. It was probably just the wind moving through the trees, or maybe an animal in the distance. But then, the voices got louder, and they weren't whispers anymore. They were clear, distinct, calling out our names. I stopped in my tracks. "Did you hear that?" I asked, my voice rising. Mark was staring ahead, his face as pale as a ghost. He nodded slowly, then pointed. "Look." I followed his finger, my heart starting to pound. In the distance between the trees, I saw something moving. Just a glimpse, like the flash of a pale face in the shadows. But it was gone before I could blink. I didn't want to go any further. I didn't want to know what that was. But Mark, he kept moving, and before I could say anything, he was already slipping through the trees, heading deeper into the woods. The further we went, the worse it got. The whispers were louder now, almost frantic, and they seemed to be circling us, always just out of reach. We were no longer alone in those woods. Mark seemed entranced, like he couldn't hear the danger in those voices. Or maybe he didn't care. He was walking faster, pulling ahead, the darkness swallowing him up piece by piece. "Mark," I called, my voice trembling. "Come back." But he didn't. He kept going, just beyond my reach. The only thing I could hear was the sound of his footsteps, then silence. And then the whispers again, only now they were closer. Too close. I followed him. That was the mistake. By the time I caught up to him, Mark had stopped. He was standing in front of something that shouldn't have been there. An old, crumbling cabin, half buried in the earth. Its roof sagged, and the walls looked like They had been consumed by time and decay. The door was hanging open, creaking with the wind. But what caught my attention wasn't the cabin itself, it was the feeling. The feeling that we weren't supposed to be there, like something had been waiting for us. Mark didn't even look at me when I reached him. He was staring into the open door. "Mark, don't go in there," I said, my voice shaking. But he didn't respond. His gaze never wavered. It was as if he was in a trance, completely oblivious to my fear. "Mark," I shouted, grabbing his arm. He turned to face me, his eyes wide with a terror I'd never seen before. "It's here," he whispered, almost too quietly. "They're here." Before I could ask what he meant, the whispers came again. Only this time they weren't in the trees. They were in my head. I felt the coldness seep into my bones as the voices surrounded me, crawling under my skin, inescapable. My body froze, unable to move, as the words began to form. "Help us. Help us." I felt something pull at my soul, dragging me forward toward the cabin. I couldn't resist. I had to go. I heard Mark's voice again. "They want us to stay. We can't leave." I tried to scream, tried to pull away, but it was too late. The air was thick, heavy with the whispers of the lost, the damned. Mark turned to me, his face now hollow, his eyes empty. "There's no way out now." Suddenly, the ground beneath us cracked open, a deep, bone-chilling growl rising from the depths of the earth. The trees began to sway violently, as if something enormous was moving beneath them. And then I felt it, the cold fingers of death wrapping around my throat. That's when I ran. I don't know how I managed to get away, but I did. I left Mark there in the woods with the whispers. When I made it back to town, I tried to tell people what happened, but they only shook their heads. "It's just an old story, Jack," they said. "Nothing to worry about." But I know the truth now. I know the whispers are real, and I know that Mark never came back. No one has seen him since. I can't stop hearing the whispers. Even now, as I sit here, safe in my house, I can hear them just outside the door. Soft, insistent, calling my name. The trees are waiting. And the worst part? They're coming for me. I hear them now, closer. It's been a week since I ran from those woods. But the whispers haven't stopped. They're always with me, lurking at the edge of my hearing. I can't escape them no matter how hard I try. I thought that if I stayed away from the pines, if I just ignored it all, the feeling would go away. But it hasn't. At night, when the wind picks up and the house creaks under the weight of the storm, I hear them, soft, subtle at first, like a distant echo, but getting closer with each passing day. When I close my eyes, I see Mark, his face twisted in that hollow, empty way. His eyes, God, his eyes, like he wasn't the same person anymore. I can't stop thinking about him. I keep replaying the last moments I saw him, standing in front of that old cabin, staring into the darkness like he was waiting for something. I wonder if he's still out there, lost in those woods. I wonder if something got to him, something in the trees. It's only a matter of time before it comes for me, too. I didn't tell anyone about the cabin. I couldn't, even when I tried to talk to my brother. Sam, he just brushed it off as me being paranoid, a result of the hike being too much for me. But I knew better. I could feel it, the weight of that place, the darkness that lived there. It had a presence, a pull I couldn't ignore. I thought maybe if I could just get back there, just step into those woods one more time, I'd find some way to put to rest. I had to know what happened to Mark, even if it killed me. So 2 days ago, I packed my things, threw a few essentials into my backpack, and drove back to the edge of the pines. It was dusk when I arrived, the sky a dark purple, the trees thick and intimidating. I parked my car and sat there for a while, staring at the woods, trying to muster the courage to step out. Then I heard it, a whisper, soft at first, but unmistakable. It came from deep within the trees, just beyond my car, like someone was standing there in the dark, calling me, "Jack." I froze, my heart hammered in my chest, but my body didn't move. I knew that voice. It was Mark's voice, barely a whisper, but it was him. I stepped out of the car, my legs shaking. I didn't want to go in, not really, but I couldn't ignore it. I had to find out. I had to see if Mark was still out there. The woods felt different this time. They weren't just dark, they were alive. The trees were so thick, I could barely make out the path ahead. It was as though the woods themselves were closing in on me. I felt like I was walking into something that shouldn't be disturbed. The deeper I went, the worse it got. The whispers were louder now, not just from one direction, but from all around me. It was like the trees themselves were speaking. The voices echoed in my mind, repeating the same thing over and over. Help us. Help us. I almost turned back then. I almost gave in to the fear that was starting to claw at me from the inside. But I couldn't. I couldn't leave without answers, without knowing what had happened to Mark. The air grew colder as I moved through the forest. I could feel it in my breath, like something was suffocating me, pulling the warmth from my body. My skin prickled with the sensation of eyes watching me. I wasn't alone, not anymore. I pushed through the branches, ignoring the scrapes on my arms, until I reached the spot where the cabin had been. But it wasn't there anymore. It was gone. The ground where the cabin had stood was empty. There was nothing but dirt and dead leaves, scattered and untouched. The very spot where I had seen Mark's face, where we had stood only days before, was now a memory. I was standing in the middle of nowhere. I looked around, feeling the weight of something unseen pressing down on me. My heart raced, my breathing shallow. Where had the cabin gone? Had I imagined it all? Had the woods taken it away, like they had taken Mark? Then I heard it, a low, guttural sound, like something scraping against the earth. It came from behind me. I spun around, my breath caught in my throat. Nothing, just the dark, empty woods. But the feeling didn't leave. That same presence, that same oppressive weight was still there. The trees seemed to lean in, as if they were watching me, listening. And then I saw it, a flash of white through the trees, a figure. It was him, Mark. He was standing in the shadows, just beyond the reach of the trees. His face was pale, his eyes wide and glassy, his clothes torn. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, like he hadn't eaten. Mark, I shouted, my voice cracking. Mark, is that you? He didn't respond. He just stood there, staring at me with that empty, vacant look. Mark, I called again, taking a step forward. My feet moved of their own accord, driven by the need to reach him, to pull him away from whatever had taken hold of him. But as I stepped closer, the air around me shifted. The whispers grew louder, surrounding me, drowning out everything else. I couldn't hear my own thoughts. My heart pounded in my chest as I reached out for him, and then as quickly as he had appeared, he vanished. Just disappeared. I stopped in my tracks, my hand still outstretched. The wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the faintest echo of Mark's voice. Help us. It wasn't him. It wasn't Mark anymore. And I knew in that moment that he wasn't coming back. I turned and ran. I didn't look back, not even once. I didn't care if the whispers followed me. I didn't care if I was leaving Mark, or whatever he had become, behind. I needed to get out. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out, until I was far enough from those woods that I couldn't feel their pull anymore. I made it back to my car, gasping for air. My hands shook as I fumbled for my keys. I had to leave. I had to get out of here before whatever was in those woods came after me, too. But as I pulled away, my eyes caught something in the rearview mirror, a figure standing at the edge of the trees. Mark, or what was left of him. He was watching me. His eyes were no longer empty. They were full of something else now, something dark. I don't know how I made home that night. I don't remember the drive. I don't remember anything except the image of his face in the mirror, staring back at me, and the sound of the whispers still echoing in my ears. I don't know if I'll ever be free of the woods. I don't know if I'll ever be free of the whispers. But I do know one thing for certain. They're not finished with me yet. And the worst part? I can feel them waiting, watching. They're getting closer. That night, I locked every door, every window in my house. I couldn't stop the shaking. The terror was so raw, so overwhelming, I could feel it in my bones. The whispers didn't stop after I left the woods. They followed me home. Every creak of the house, every gust of wind made my heart race. It wasn't the house settling, it wasn't the wind. It was them, the voices calling to me, calling me back. I tried to drown it out. I turned on the TV, blasted music, anything to fill the silence. But the whispers, they never went away. I lay in bed that night, my mind racing. My body was exhausted from the sprint through the woods. But sleep wouldn't come. I kept thinking about Mark, or whatever he had become. I couldn't shake the image of his empty eyes, his torn clothes. The way he had disappeared so suddenly, like he wasn't even human anymore. Help us. Help us. The words echoed in my mind. The whispering had gotten clearer, more insistent, as though it was coming from inside my own head now. I could feel it again. The pull, the call. I thought about the cabin, the strange feeling that had gripped me when I saw it. There had to be something there, something that connected the whispers, Mark's disappearance, and everything that was happening now. But what? What could be powerful enough to drag someone into the woods and turn them into that? I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to go back. I had to know what was happening, even if it meant going deeper into the darkness. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning. I didn't want to scare anyone, especially Sam. The last thing I needed was someone thinking I had lost my mind. But I knew what I had to do. I couldn't live with myself if I didn't. The next morning I packed a bag. This time, I was more prepared. I didn't want to be caught off guard again. I grabbed a flashlight, a first aid kit, and a knife. It seemed foolish, but it made me feel a little better. The drive to the pines was even worse than before. I don't know if it was the dread that had built up in me, or if the woods themselves had some kind of presence that reached out to drag me in. The further I drove, the more suffocating the air felt. It was like the trees were closing in on me, whispering, urging me to turn back. But I didn't. I couldn't. When I parked at the edge of the woods, I felt it again, the pull, the whispers louder now. They were everywhere, in the trees, in the air, inside my head. I could hear them now clearer than before, as if they had followed me all this time, waiting for me to come back. I stood at the entrance to the woods for a moment, trying to gather my courage. My breath came in short, panic bursts. But I couldn't stop now, not when I was this close. I stepped forward, the leaves crunching underfoot, the silence pressing in around me. The whispers were constant now, like a hum, like something deep inside the forest was alive, aware of my presence. And then out of the corner of my eye, I saw something move, a flash of white. My heart stopped. It was Mark. No, it couldn't be, but it was. His figure pale and gaunt, standing just beyond the trees, his eyes fixed on me with that same empty stare. I froze. My body refused to move, as though it knew something I didn't. But I couldn't resist the urge to walk toward him. I had to know. I had to understand what was happening. Mark, I called, my voice barely more than a whisper. Mark, is that you? He didn't move. He just stood there, his eyes locked on me, his mouth slightly open as though he was trying to speak but couldn't. I reached out, my hand trembling, as though I was touching a thread of something fragile, something ancient. But as I stepped forward, I saw it. Behind Mark, beyond his broken figure, the trees began to shift. They moved, not like branches in the wind, but like they were alive. The trunks twisted and groaned, and the ground beneath me trembled. Then I heard it, a deep grinding sound, the earth splitting, something massive and ancient stirring beneath it. The trees bent and cracked, as if something was rising from the ground. I backed away, my heart pounding in my chest. The air had turned cold, colder than it should have been for a fall day, and it tasted sour like rot. The whispers were louder now, drowning out everything else. Help us. Help us. Let us out. Mark's eyes were no longer empty. They were filled with something dark, something sinister. His lips parted, and the words came clearer now. with an unmistakable edge of desperation. "They won't stop, Jack. They never stop." Before I could respond, before I could even process what he said, the ground beneath us split wide open. The trees shook violently, and from the chasm in the earth, something massive began to rise. I couldn't breathe. The air was thick with fear, thick with something else. Something ancient, something evil. I felt the presence all around me, a force so strong it felt like I was being pulled into the earth itself. The creature that emerged from the chasm wasn't human. It was a shape, a mass of darkness and shadows, twisting and writhing, its form shifting in unnatural ways. It was like nothing I had ever seen before. It was ancient and old, like it had been buried beneath the earth for centuries, waiting for something, waiting for someone. It had no face, just a shifting mass of tendrils reaching out, searching. And as it reached, I could hear the whispers grow louder, almost deafening. It was calling to me. It wanted me. I turned to Mark, but he was gone. There was nothing left of him. Nothing but the same empty, hollow eyes in the trees staring down at me. I didn't hesitate. I ran. The creature, whatever it was, followed, its tendrils stretching toward me, scraping the ground with an eerie hiss. The trees seemed to close in on me, blocking my path. The whispers were unbearable, crawling under my skin, pulling me back toward the chasm. I pushed forward, ignoring the branches that scraped at my face, the thorns that tore at my clothes. I could hear it behind me, the sound of something massive, its footsteps shaking the earth. Then, just as I thought I couldn't run any further, the whispers stopped. The world fell silent. The ground beneath me stopped shaking, and for a moment I thought maybe I had outrun it. Maybe it had stopped chasing me. But when I looked behind me, there was nothing. No creature, no shadows, no whispers, just the woods. I don't know how I made it out. I don't know how I found the road, or how I managed to drive myself back home. My mind was fractured, torn between the image of Mark's hollow eyes, the creature, and the whispers that still claw at the edges of my mind. But I'm home now. At least I think I am. Because the whispers, they followed me back. They're here in my house. They're in the walls, in the floors, in the air. I can hear them, louder than ever. And I know now, deep down in my gut, that I haven't escaped. The woods are still calling. And next time, they won't let me go.